All right, what's going on, guys? Dr. Andrew Fix back for another episode on the code. You've heard me say this a lot, but I'm sitting inside of Lion's Den Strength Mobility Performance, where our Denver Tech Center physio room location is, doing this episode today. So if you hear any gym noise in the background, that's what's going on around here. But we've got an awesome interview lined up for you guys today. We have a client of ours and an ultra marathoner, Don Reichelt, joining us. You could say he runs a little bit. But Don, thanks for joining me, buddy. I appreciate you coming over here.
Yeah, this is awesome, Andrew. Glad to be here, and I appreciate what you guys do here at Physio Room, keeping me moving.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and it's funny sort of how we got connected. We have some like mutual friends, mutual connections. I think this is one of the cool things about social media, right? How this sort of all works. But Don somewhat recently, several months ago, became a client of ours at Physio Room. He's actually someone that we do, I would say, at least half of the work with virtually, because he doesn't live very close to our physical locations. When he's in town, he does come in the clinic, but then we work with him virtually when he's not. And all under the goal of like, we want to keep this running journey going. And he's a very competitive ultra marathoner. So Don, let's do all the listeners a favor, and if you could do a more thorough introduction of yourself, that would be awesome. Share a little bit of your background, and,
Sure.
And then we'll get into it.
Yeah, so let's start with coming to Physio Room. Most recently, I was training to run the US 24-hour national championship race and was dealing with a couple of physical issues. So reached out. I had known Chris for quite a while through the industry, and reached out and started getting some treatments. And then, so most recently, thanks to Physio Room, not that this is a commercial, but most recently, thanks to Physio Room, won the US 24-hour national championship.
Yeah.
So that's the most recent thing. And then backing up, I think I have just about 100 plus mile finishes in my career now.
20 plus 100 mile races.
Yeah, so a lot of 100-mile plus racing, including the longest race was just this past year in 2023, Cocodona 250.
Yeah,
it's 250 miles across Arizona. I did a 48-hour race that I ran 190 miles in this past year. Have been on the podium at races like Badwater, which is also known as the world's toughest foot race, running 135 miles through Death Valley in the middle of July. Lots of different stuff. And I think the coolest thing that I've found in my career is I don't like to do one specific thing. A lot of athletes, they find their one thing and they stick with it, right? Like I have my 100-mile best on trail is 13 hours and 16 minutes, which is sub 8-minute mile pace. So that's, I think as of today, as sitting here, it's like the 74th or 75th fastest 100-mile time in world history.
Yeah.
Right. And so I take that and then I back that up with doing big mountain hundreds and 250 miles across the mountains of Arizona and different stuff. So my career has just basically been, I never set out to be good at this thing. I just wanted to go do cool things that I like doing and do something I know is going to challenge me versus sticking with that thing that I know I can do really well.
Yeah. And I like that because I too am somebody who just loves variety of training. And, we've talked a little bit about Physio Room. Well, I've been dealing with my own physical issues, primarily the Achilles. And I would identify as a runner also, but the longest run I've done is 15 miles and change. And it was actually supposed to be a 13-mile run, and we made a wrong turn on a trail, and we realized that a mile in and had to backtrack a mile. So anyways, I was training for a half marathon at the time. So I was like, well, we're going to do this 13-mile training run. And, but I've been dealing with an Achilles issue. So I've totally shifted my goals to be more lifting focused while I focus on trying to rehab this. It's been a very long time coming with like surgery and stuff on this Achilles. But what did you do like growing up? How did you get into running ultra marathons?
Yeah, I ran a little bit in high school. Never a good athlete as far as running was concerned. Never broke 20 minutes in a 5K in high school. I had a couple of good track meets, but other than that, wasn't a good runner. Didn't run in college. Actually walked onto the crew team at University of Iowa just as something to do. And my whole athletic career has been, I will work harder than the next guy.
Yeah,
I'm not physically gifted. I'm just willing to be in the gym until midnight and wake up and do it again tomorrow. So 4-year member of the University of Iowa crew team.
Cool.
And then actually once I graduated that, I put on a ton of weight. I didn't have that team atmosphere anymore.
Right.
That push of somebody telling me, you know, get up at 4, go work out, do this. And I lost that drive and I put on a ton of weight. I put on like 40 pounds in 3 months and knew I needed to make a change. So I actually bought a bike.
Yeah.
And a bike led me to a buddy that was doing triathlon. He said, hey man, like do a triathlon with me.
Yeah.
And I said, okay.
Yeah, I'll do it.
But I saw this one thing on TV one time called an Ironman, so we should probably just do that.
Let's just go all in.
And so I didn't know how to swim, and I signed up for an Ironman.
Yeah.
So just my whole career from that point on has been like throw me into the deep end, let me figure it out.
Yeah.
So I did 3 Ironman races. I was training for a 4th, and just decided I hated swimming. I hated swimming all the time during the training, but I just never loved it. And I woke up one day and like, what am I doing? I had just moved to Boulder. I was training previously in Chicago and Iowa and had just moved to Boulder, Colorado. And here I am road running and riding a bike on the streets. Like, what am I doing? The mountains are right there. So I had a buddy that was doing a 100-mile race in Leadville.
Yeah. And
I said, hey man, let me pace you. Didn't know what that meant. Had never run over a marathon, but I signed up to run 28 miles to the mountains with him. And so I did that, and I was like, okay, this is incredible. This is the coolest thing ever. So I signed up for my first 100 and jumped in and was really bad and almost didn't finish and almost was last place almost. But I fell in love with that process of I'm gonna work hard and get the results I want. And I knew like this is a sport, ultra running is a sport that it rewards people that'll go out and work not necessarily harder, but smarter than everybody else.
Yeah.
Because there's an element, right? I mean, if you're trying to run 200 miles a week, you're going to get hurt and not going to compete. But if you're just training smarter and you put in the miles and you put in the mobility and you put in the strength training and you put in the nutrition work, things like that, eventually it's going to start paying off and you're going to learn those lessons and become more successful. So I went from my first race back in 2015, my first 100, almost last / not even finishing to over the next 2 years, cutting, 14 hours off my 100-mile time.
Wow.
And I went from a 29-hour finisher to a 15, and then most recently then to a 13-hour.
Cutting more time off your 100-mile finish than it even takes you to run one now.
Yes.
That's pretty impressive.
More than cut in half.
And
then so then now it's just whatever I can do to hang on to that career. And I never got into this to chase results.
Yeah.
And I'm not chasing results. I would rather sign a piece of paper today that said I can run when I'm 80 versus win another race.
Yeah, I like that.
And that's why I do things like strength training and stuff. It's like obviously it does help me running, but I know I'm going to be moving and physically capable of doing cool shit when I'm 80 versus like selling all out in, like some of these ultra runners, they're doing these 160 miles a week and no strength training, and they know that they're going to have a bright candle. It's going to burn bright, but it's going to burn out when they're 30. Yeah. And I'm not taking that deal.
Yeah, well, and I want to unpack some of the stuff that you said, but before I ask you some of those follow-up questions, I don't even know this. You mentioned that, you moved out here, you decided to pay somebody for Leadville, and how old were you then? How old are you now? So when did you get into
my first 100-mile
marathon?
My first 100-mile race was when I was 29. Okay. I'm 38 right now.
38. All right.
Yeah. So this is my 10th year. It'll be in October, it'll be my 10th year of ultra running.
Yeah, and it sounds like over those 10 years or 9+, you have learned some things about working smarter, not just harder than the other people, even though you've been someone who from growing up, I'm going to outwork people because I'm maybe not as naturally gifted as some of these other teammates on my high school teams or whatever, but I'm just going to continue to put in the work and I'm going to outwork people and just see that pay off. But where do you think you got some of that mentality, back in high school? Because I think we have that in common. Yeah. I was like I said, I'm not getting into ultra marathons at the moment, but I was always the person where we were at football practice in high school or in college. And when we were going to run gassers at the end of practice, it didn't matter who was the fastest person on our team. I was going to keep running them until coach said we were done. And I was going to not, slack off on one rep thinking I don't know how many we have left. I was just going to run every single one as hard as I could. And I'm just going to beat my teammates because I'm really competitive. And you know, people would be griping about like, oh man, we have to run more. And I'm like, let's go. Let's do another one. Let's do another one.
Very similar. I've
Yeah.
always been I might not beat you on the first 10 laps of all out 400s.
Yeah.
But that 11th one is mine, or that 14th one, like whatever it is,
Yeah.
I will stay there until we find out what that lap is that I can beat you on.
Yeah.
And I'm not letting you go home until I beat you.
Yep.
And that's just always been that mentality. It's like I'll figure it out. If it's, you know, me versus you right now, you'll probably beat me in a 200-yard sprint, but maybe I'll get you at 600.
Yeah, sure.
Like who knows where it is?
Yeah.
I want to find that.
Yeah.
And that's both externally, I want to beat you, but I also want to find that for me too.
Yeah.
It's like, where's that? Where do I'm like, man, I can't go anymore. I can't. I this is my limit, and I never want to look back. Let's say, you know, when I'm 80,
Yep.
I don't want to look back and say like, damn, I wish I would have like pushed just a little harder on one of those reps. They're just, because the day will come when I can't run anymore. Dude, it could be today. I could walk out and get hit by a car and never run again.
Yeah.
And I don't want to look back and regret not giving my all on one rep. And that motivates me every day.
Yeah, I like that because, you know, that is true. The future is not promised for any one of us. We don't know what's going to happen. And you don't want to look back and have that. Like, and I'm even picturing right now, as I'm staring at my like college running singlet right there on the wall, there is one rep in particular that I remember from college track that I probably could have pushed harder and I didn't. And then I didn't have the result I wanted in the meet that weekend. And I'm always like, well, I wonder if on that second to last rep, if I would have just gave just a little bit more and pushed through some of the significant physical discomfort I was having, right? Respiratory, muscles, legs burning and whatnot. Like what could have happened? Well, we'll never know. So here we are. And that's like a lesson you learn from. So then how have you gone from that, right? Like, I'm just going to outwork you. I want to find what that internal limit is. And I like that you said, like, you know, you started to talk about like internal motivation and not just external motivation of beating other people. And then you mentioned like, I'd rather be able to run 180 than win another race. Because what we find with people is external motivation is great, right? It gets people really pumped up. I had a teammate in college, like if there was a t-shirt on the line at a college track meet, like he didn't care about the medals, right? He had tons of medals. But if it was a meet where like the winner got a shirt, dude, you better bet he was going to win the 400 that day because he had that external motivation of that t-shirt. Some people run races for medals or whatever. But that's not what keeps you coming back day after day, week after week, month after month, and year after year of training. It needs to be something that's internal. It needs to be some deeper motivation that makes you willing to wake up at 5 a.m. and go out for a run. There's pitch black outside, you put your headlamp on and you just got to go. So like, how did you start to transition, or when did you notice maybe a transition from I'm going to outwork people to no, this is more of like an internal thing. I want to work smarter, not harder. I want to believe in and enjoy the process and not just I want to outwork people so that I can beat them.
I think the word process is the right is the appropriate word. And somewhere along the way I fell in love with the process of tinkering and kind of N of one research of gosh, if I change this, what happens the next few weeks? I used metrics and data to completely change my diet because so I went plant-based for a year and a half because the data, both sleep data, recovery data, heart rate data on morning workouts and blood data said it was the right decision for me. And after about a year and a half, this is just back in August, it was starting to say, okay, maybe some lean protein, animal-based protein wouldn't be the worst thing. And so I added some chicken back into my diet. And so I am willing to be
the guinea pig.
Take these little things and just like, what can I optimize today? And so there's a process side of it, and then there's like a curiosity side of it.
Yeah.
Like if I change this, what's gonna happen? It's fun, right? Like I'm not a Michael Jordan. I'm not out here making $40 million a year doing what I'm doing. It's like if I make a change, like, what's the worst that happens? I just don't feel good. Okay, then I can go back. But like, what if it makes me better? Let's find that out. And so I fell in love with the process of training, getting up, doing hard things, like exploring my personal limits in a workout, and then kind of N of one research on myself of looking at HRV data, seeing even down to let's look at the EKG data from like sauna to cold plunge and back, and like what happens, like what is the physiological change between those, and then let's compare that to workouts the next morning to see, like, did it help it? Did it not? Did I sleep well? And looking at all that data, I'm fascinated by it. And even if I'm slow 20 years from now, or when I'm slow 20 years from now, I think that data will still be interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and let's maybe explore that just a little bit. I have more questions I'll go back and ask you, but we've had an episode or two on the show where we talked about that, where we talked about the importance of sleep and how to dial in and structure your sleep quality.
Yeah.
We've talked about the benefits of cold exposure, cold plunging, heat exposure, saunas. We've talked to people who have a practice of doing that, like pretty much daily. As a very general, like overall finding, like what are the things that you found in your like recovery processes and the data that you track? Like what are the things that you're finding?
Yeah, I mean it's nothing earth shattering.
Yeah.
Right. Don't drink.
Yeah.
Don't eat a big meal after 6:30, 7 p.m. for me.
Well, and while you're answering that, let's maybe talk about like when you do those things, what are the things that you see in the data because it sounds like the data is what has sort of steered you to change these lifestyle things. So like, we might be, I'm wearing a Whoop, you're wearing different things. So like, what are the things
I worked for Aura for 2 years too,
okay.
So the data, it was important to me, and it is important to me. So like, let's take alcohol. For me, what I would see is that my HRV would be pretty plummeted until late morning, and then it wouldn't start raising until maybe more like an hour to 2 hours before I would wake up. And that's just not ideal, right? You want to see that HRV start going up mid, and I'm an athlete that works out later at night oftentimes too, so it's normal for me to have a pretty low HRV immediately at night and then raising in the morning, but with even one drink of alcohol, it really dramatically delayed that.
Before you continue, can you, with your experience in the field, I think most of the people that are listening to this probably have a good idea, but can you explain to us what exactly HRV is, or at least as sort of general overview?
Yeah, so heart rate variability, HRV, it's a big trigger word. So it's basically and I didn't work on the science side of it.
Okay, no, that's good. I'm putting you on the spot here.
No, so it's basically the variability between heart rates.
Yes,
So ideally, to show rest and recovered state, you want a bigger variability between the beats. And everybody's different. This is where it's like I could look at my HRV and I could look at your HRV, and we could have the same number and it could be something totally different. So that's another element of HRV is like don't look at your buddy's HRV and say, oh man, you're at 90, I'm only at 50. You're so much more recovered than me. It literally does not matter. Person to person, it's so different. So
it's very individual.
All you want to see is understand what your baseline is, and then what can you do to raise it, and what you can do to lower it. And I can tell you, I generally, if I look at Oura Ring, for example, they average it throughout the whole night. Well, I just told you that my HRV generally starts pretty dang low because I work out later in the day a second time. And so if I just look at the average, it'd be like 40.
Yeah.
And that's really low. But if I look at, so I actually only look I usually get up at 5. So midnight, between midnight and 5, I want to see when it's maximum, and when did I hit 100 for the first time overnight, and that's usually for me around 2 to 3 a.m. on most nights. If I drink alcohol, it might not happen at all. I might not even hit 100.
Got it.
So that spike that I'm looking for later at the night doesn't happen. Other elements I look for, like sleeping temperature, like when am I reaching my low point of my body temperature or my high point? Because ideally you should have a nice even curve at night versus different shapes. That's another reason that the sauna works great, because it kicks in your body's natural ability to say, hey, we're going to start cooling us off. You can actually, your body cools itself off a little bit faster, so you can get into deep sleep faster. All that stuff is fascinating to me, and eating late. Okay, a lot of blood flow is going to my stomach, it's going to digestion, it's forcing me to actually be working on things other than sleeping. So I'm not naturally going to get into that deep sleep phase, and I can look at my data and say, it's like, okay, well, I only got 2 hours of deep sleep last night versus 2 nights ago.
Yeah.
When I stopped eating at 6, I didn't drink, I got 3 hours or 4 hours of deep sleep. So it's
Yeah.
it's again, this stuff's all so unique,
Mhm.
but we've never had more access to data.
Yeah.
And that's just like, if you have any desire to, I'm not even gonna say be faster, stronger, whatever, just feel good or maintain your baseline, you should be looking at your data.
Yeah.
As far as, how did I sleep last night? What did I do? What were the habits? Just journal it. You don't need a Whoop or an Aura to do all that stuff. Just, look at your time in bed, how you feel, journal that, and start making some correlations.
Yeah. I love that because they're all, it's all relatively simple things that anyone can do if we just like pay attention to it. And what I always tell people is like, what gets measured gets managed.
Yep.
Well, if you're just flying by the seat of your pants, you're shooting from the hip every single night, you're just eating whatever you want at whatever time you want. Some nights I drink, some nights I don't. And you don't really pay attention to how you feel in response to those things, well, then you'll never know.
No.
But if you start putting some correlations in place, then you can start to see trends, and then we can start to change those trends by making some selective choices. So yeah, I think it's very fascinating.
And then you can control your habits and start getting into sleep hygiene, where it's okay, every night I'm going to start my bedtime routine at 8 p.m. I'm going to shut the phone off. I'm going to put the blue light glasses on, turn the TV off. Even if you're not sleeping and falling asleep until 10, it's like, what does that 2 hours look like?
Yeah.
And you can start learning that, hey, here's the routine that I do every night that optimizes my sleep.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, I can tell you for myself, it's not going to come as a shock when I say this, but like the nights where I have a more calm finish to the evening, where I'm hanging out with my wife, we're talking about stuff, we get ready to go to bed at our normal time. We like to, pretty much go upstairs at like 9, and I like to be like hopefully sleeping at 9:30 in an ideal world. And I normally wake up at 5:30.
Yeah.
So I try to give myself at least like an 8-hour window to get at least 7 hours of sleep, because we're not going to sleep 100% of the night. But then those are the nights where it goes better. Right?
Yeah.
In the nights where I am, whether it's on my phone, whether it's on my computer, working up until 10 minutes before I go to bed, those are the nights where it takes me longer to fall asleep. If I look at the data, it takes me longer to get into some significant rest. And then on the other side of the coin, there's some nights where like, maybe I'm watching a sporting event or something, big football fan, maybe I'm watching some playoff football at the time of this recording, but I'm not doing something that's like putting me really into like a stressful state, right? I'm not like working, I'm not like doing stuff, I'm just like observing. I might lack sleep because I went to bed later because I stayed up to watch the game, but my sleep quality it doesn't seem to be quite as affected because like
you're still getting rest.
I'm still like just chilling, I'm watching the game, I'm not like doing something that's mentally demanding, taking my focus and being like glued into the computer.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, that's short term, 1 day a week.
Yep.
Fine.
Yeah.
If that becomes the habit, problem. I mean, it's like the going into 100-mile or a 24-hour race.
Yeah.
The night before the race, yes, it matters, but it matters more to get rest versus sleep. Like if you don't get perfect sleep the night before a 100-miler or an ultra, that's okay. But 2 nights before, if you don't sleep both of those nights, then you're getting into a problem.
For sure.
And so that's where it's interesting, and I mean I love talking about sleep. I think it's an important topic, and it leads into the bigger topic, because if the better I sleep, the better I can wake up and perform.
Yeah.
And the better I can wake up and perform, the better I am tomorrow. And like my big thing, and I talk to athletes about this all the time, is let's say on my biggest day during the week I train 3 hours.
Yeah.
Well, that's 21 more hours of the day that like I can, what am I doing those other 21 hours?
Yep.
To make sure that I'm better tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's things like sleep and nutrition and mobility and the passive stuff. Even if you're sitting and watching that football game, like what can I be doing passively that helps me sleep better, to get up and run better?
Now you're speaking my language, because if you're any clients here listening to this from Physio Room, especially if you've seen me, but probably if you've seen anybody on our team, you've heard us talk about that stuff. Where like I was literally telling someone before this coming weekend, they're gonna be watching some playoff football.
Yeah.
And like, well, instead of sitting on the couch
Yeah.
and like only getting up on commercials to go to the restroom or whatever, or grab more food or beer, can we pop down on the floor, do some 90-90 hip mobility?
Right.
Can we pop down on the floor, do a couch stretch and stretch out that quad and hip flexor? Can you break out a massage gun or a foam roller or whatever
Yeah.
and just like literally do something?
Yeah.
Or at the very least, change your body position around
Something.
instead of just like sitting on the couch
Slouching,
and
yeah.
hanging out watching the game for 3.5 hours. And we could talk about this stuff for the whole episode, but what I thought was interesting is you started to talk about when I get better sleep, when I make these better habit choices
Yeah.
about my lifestyle, whether it's not drinking alcohol or whatever, I sleep better, but I wake up better and then I can perform better the next day. And one of the other things that is so fascinating to me is the way that our body works and the way our hormones work. And when we're well rested, our ability to make good choices the next day and the next week, right? So like our hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin. Well, when we don't sleep well, those are thrown out of balance and we are more hungry the next day, typically for things that are not that good for us, right? We crave certain things when we're fatigued that we don't really crave when we're well rested. And then all of these things start to stack and layer on top of each other for either the better or for the worse, right? So because then if you wake up poorly rested, you make some less than optimal choices around nutrition, and then maybe around your lifestyle, maybe you go to bed late the next night. Well, then that affects your sleep the next night.
Yeah.
And then that affects your performance the next day. And it just snowballs in a bad way. But we can also have it snowball in a positive way.
Sure.
Like we can stack little wins on top of one another. So then let's get into this a little bit. Like, what are maybe some of the things aside from I try to avoid alcohol, try to have a nice bedtime routine, go to bed at the right time. What are some of these other things around like mobility and nutrition and things that you try to put in place every single day that you feel like really makes a difference for you from a performance and how you feel standpoint?
I mean, probably the biggest one is just regular movement for me throughout the day.
Yeah.
I know this is tough for some people with desk jobs. It's hard to just get up and move around, but just
Yeah.
for me, I have to change my body position pretty regularly. Every 20 or 30 minutes, I need to change something. And that I find that helps me with creativity and blood flow. I feel like I can get through my workday a little bit faster, more efficiently. And then the decision fatigue hasn't laid in come dinner time, so I can have a healthier meal and not just like, let's grab a bunch of cookies and I don't even want whatever. So for me, movement is kind of the principle, and it doesn't have to be a lot. Sometimes it's even just a golf ball under the foot. Like I'm moving something.
Yeah.
I'm not just stagnant.
Yeah.
And I don't do well with stagnation in general, and I know a lot of athletes don't, but figure out creative ways to do that. And then another thing that I do throughout the day is just I journal a lot and I write down like everything I need to do, everything I don't need to do. Before I run, I journal what is my intention for the run. When I get back, I just journal did I hit that intention before I look at any of the data at all. I don't want the data to define the success of my run.
How do I feel? Yeah.
And so it's like it's getting all these thoughts out of my head allows me to then move on. And then I can get back to work, and it's like, okay, boom, run done. Don't need to think about that anymore. One thing that I started doing that's interesting. Everybody, a lot of people talk about the standing desks, and that's the whole sitting is the new smoking.
Yeah, sure.
Everybody's saying that. But I started like tall kneeling at my desk.
I was talking with someone about that this morning. We were literally having this discussion.
Yeah, and it's helping me with glute engagement and feeling the glutes engaged.
Yeah.
And then that's helping me run. And so it's finding these little, I said before, what are these little passive things that I can do in my quote 21 other hours of the day that, I'm not really thinking about it, but it's making me a better runner. And so it's be honest with yourself. It's the only advice I give people is literally, I'll just write stuff down. I'm like, hey, does this make me a better runner?
Yeah.
Yes or no. And it's okay to have a no. Like, sitting at a
Just
desk, working for 8 hours a day doesn't make me a better runner, but then say, okay, but here's what I can do while I work that might make me a better runner, or will let me recover faster or sleep better tonight. And I mean, there's other pillars too, just hydration and nutrition
Totally.
and movement, but those just the big things, and it's just simple yes or no. So, like,
Yeah.
did I eat healthy today? Yes or no. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be. You don't have to track every macro to know you ate healthy.
Yeah.
So, like some people, they grossly overcomplicate the stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and I think so many times, like I have this nutrition certification through this organization called Precision Nutrition. I love their stuff. One of the things I love about it is basically what you just mentioned. Like they would say the same thing. So many people way overcomplicate this stuff, and they worry too much about like the small percentage items instead of just focusing on the basics. Like, can we just master the basics? And with any client that you are going to work with, no matter if they're like an elite bodybuilder, or they're a professional athlete, or they're someone who is in what they consider the worst shape of their life, and they just want to start moving more and start some exercise habits. With all of those people, you're going to start with the basic building block habits.
Yeah.
And until that person has mastered those, you do not graduate on to the next things like, when should I take my protein and should I take this supplement? Well, if you're not getting adequate sleep, you're not hitting adequate nutrition, hydration and whatnot, that stuff doesn't really matter that much until we do these other things. So let's focus on that first.
I actually used to write curriculum for Noom. You probably didn't know that, but I worked for Noom for a little over a year.
Yeah.
Writing health curriculum. It was the same deal. It's
Mhm.
we would get people that have all the best intentions in the world, but it's kind of shocking how literal or how little education there is about what a calorie versus a carb versus a fat versus a protein. People just had no idea. And I think that looking back, our school system has failed a lot of people.
Sure.
And you know, that's a whole nother episode that we can go
on your next episode of the code.
But it's the same deal. It's like, hey, let's just level set.
Yeah.
Like, what are we trying to accomplish, and what are the basics? You don't need to wake up overnight and, you know, count macros and all this stuff and need to know what gut biota is. And it's like, no, like all these trigger words are out there and they're scary, and they're marketing terms for a lot of companies that are trying to sell you shit. But like, let's just back up.
Yeah.
Like baseline some stuff. Like let's just do some basic. Like, I can tell you right now, I track one metric every day in nutrition. Can you guess what it is?
I can guess what it is, but I'd love for you to tell. I mean, at least for me, the one metric that I track as far as nutrition goes is I want to know what my protein is.
That's exactly what I track every day. I mean, I obviously, by a byproduct of that, I end up with my calorie count a day and most of the other metrics too. Some days I look at them, sometimes I don't, but I protein, the only thing that I'm actually looking at every day.
So I'm going to say one thing and then we're going to come right back to that. So like you've mentioned this twice and I love it. You've mentioned this, like, you know, what else are you doing with the other 21 hours of the day? And, you know, for someone that's not training 3+ hours, maybe they're training for 30 minutes, maybe they're training for 45, maybe they're training for 0. That's fine. But like, what are you doing with the time in your day? And I think for most people, let's use the example just because it's an easy one of like high level elite athletes. From a training perspective, they're all basically doing the same shit, right? Every professional football player, professional basketball player, they all have world-class coaches. They all have great strength and conditioning specialists. Like they're all training really, really hard for probably a similar amount of time throughout the day. But what makes the difference of like why one person outperforms another person is probably what they're doing with those other hours of the day, how they are structuring their life and taking care of themselves when they're not
100%.
training.
And the one element we haven't talked about that I think is as important potentially as nutrition is mindset and the mental side of training. And like it would be a shame if we didn't kind of address some of that. And I say a lot, I'm not a physically talented athlete, but I've worked my ass off to become a mentally talented athlete. And I think a lot of the best athletes, right? You hear these things, the Mamba mentality, right? Everybody knows that Kobe was the toughest worker, and he's, you know, shooting thousands of free throws, and mentally he's gonna outwork everybody. And it's just, what are you doing mentally? And I'm lucky enough to have found a sport that rewards mental toughness and lots of mental strategies in your quiver that you can pull out. And if you're not working on those throughout the day, or even on your training run, you're not going to be able to pull that out on race day. And so that's the other element that, like I say, it'd be a shame if I didn't at least put a plug for mental training and mental strength work in there too.
Totally. And I think I think that's been kind of a theme throughout, not this episode, but this show in general, is talking about that aspect. And I've said this numerous times. I think the emphasis in society on the mental aspect of things is my favorite thing that came out of us all going through the pandemic,
Yeah.
right? Is it highlighted, well, I'll say mental challenges that people are going
Yeah.
through. But I firmly believe, and we've talked about this on the show, that like mental health or wellness is a big spectrum, right? And sometimes people have conditions that do need treatment. But other times people just have like normal daily shit that we all go through.
Yeah.
And some people are better at handling that than others because of the strategies that they have in place and the things that they practice on a daily or weekly basis to be able to do that. Whether that habit is journaling or like whatever that might be, meditation or something. Or just simply, it's hard to quantify, like what amount of difference does having better sleep,
Yep.
eating a certain way, like training, like what impact does that have on how we feel mentally? Well, a big amount, but it's,
Huge.
I don't know a statistic to share with you, but we know that it's huge. So yeah, I agree with you totally. I think that's like a huge piece of this, and yeah, good
It's,
that we bring it up.
yeah, and so I do 20 to 40 minutes of meditation a day, working on focus and mindset, and then also breath work as well. And what I find is that carries over really well into running.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially really long distances. So take my last race, which was the 24-hour US Nationals Championship race, is 24 hours on a slightly less than 1 mile loop.
And the intention was
Run as far as you can.
who can complete the
Yeah.
most distance in 24 hours.
Correct.
Yeah.
And you can't wear headphones.
Yeah.
So USATF rules, no headphones.
Okay.
So it's more of a mental game than it is a
You in your head.
It
Yeah.
poured rain for the first 6 hours.
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I remember distinctly the moment that I was running step for step with the guy that was in second. I remember like vividly the moment that I knew he was mentally broken. And I'm like, you're probably physically more capable of running big miles than I am right now, but mentally you're about to drop out of this thing. And like 2 laps later, he was walking.
Wow.
And I was like, yep, that was it. And I just knew that was like 16 hours in, and I knew I'd won the race at that point.
So I'm curious, not to like harp on what this guy was dealing with, but like what is something that you noticed that told you, I think this guy is mentally going to be checked out of this? And the reason I ask is because I know as an athlete, when you notice that in another athlete, it just gives you just even a little bit more spark. Yeah, because I used to, especially with football or track, like if I played cornerback in college, and if I got the sense that the receiver that I was guarding was like mentally not in a good place because either he dropped the ball or I had covered him well on a couple plays or whatever, it just pumped me up even more to like keep trying to kick this dude's ass because like I know I'm going to be able to mentally break him.
Yeah,
right?
Pop him a little harder at the line.
Right, exactly.
Like that.
Yeah. And you see this all the time in sports. I think you see it less in running. Like you're not trying to necessarily do anything to him like you might do in a contact sport like football, where like you're trying to get in people's heads in that environment. But like what is something that you noticed?
Yep.
And then what was your response, or like what did you do as a result of that?
So he was just starting to talk about
you guys were chatting.
Yeah, we were running we were running together.
Yeah.
It's a 1 mile loop, right? You tend to run together, and so I noticed a couple things. One, he was I didn't care if he was ahead of me or behind, but he was obsessed with sticking with me. And then he started complaining about things outside of his control.
Well,
and to me, that's a big sign of like, dude, we can't, neither one of us can control that it's getting hot here. Like acknowledge it, move on. And he was starting to kind of get in his head about it. Don't get me wrong, I was suffering. It was humid. It sucked. I told my crew it sucked. But for him to tell me that, like that was like
competitor.
Like dude, I was like, okay, he's giving up. And then so he started walking, and then later we ran a lap together, and he just said, I'm good with second place. And so I was like, all right, I just gotta keep moving forward.
I'm just gonna keep cruising. That is probably, I had 2 different football coaches in college, and I keep bringing up this like college athletics. I feel like I learned a lot of lessons over that time period in my life. And our one, I think that topic was one that he talked about more than anything else, right? Like just control the controllables, control what you can control. And it's a waste of your breath and energy to worry or complain about stuff that you can't fix.
Yeah.
The weather,
Yeah.
the referees in a football game, like the running surface that
Yeah.
you're on. Like if you're like, oh, I wish we weren't running on pavement for this
Yeah.
race. Like, well, we are.
We
so
are.
you can't change it.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to acknowledge
Yeah,
that
for
stuff
sure.
exists, right?
Yep.
But then that's where the meditation comes in is like when you're meditating, you can, if stray thoughts come through your brain, you acknowledge them and then you move on.
Yeah.
And so these long races where it's just you and your thoughts, just be
Yep.
like, yeah, you know what? It does suck that the sun is hot right now. It's 80 degrees and humid.
Yep.
Cool. What am I gonna do about it? Nothing.
Now
Great.
we move on.
Now
Yeah.
we move on.
Yeah,
Look at
'cause
that.
you-
Look at that cool bird. And so that's where I have a series of like moving meditations that I
Yeah.
use when I find that mindset like straying to focusing on the negative. It's like, okay, for the next 20 minutes, I'm gonna count birds, or I'm gonna see how many trees I can name, and just be like, hey, Dale, like that tree's Dale.
Yeah.
Like just starting doing just the goofiest stuff to take that focus from internal to external.
Yep.
Because then once it's external, you're back doing the easiest, literally the easiest thing in the world is running for me. Right? It's just the thing I love the most. Like, why am I grumpy? Nope, I'm gonna go hang out with Dale the tree.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that because if you can control that mindset, your ability to do almost literally anything is so much better. Like it doesn't matter if we're talking about significant physical endurance running or making it through your workday and like knocking out things on your to-do list. My wife and I are about to become new parents. Well, there's going to be times where we're going to be lacking sleep and the baby's going to be screaming and we're going to be just like, had it up to here because this happens to everybody. And if you can control some of that mental side of things and just like shift your focus and practice gratitude, focus on like for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to point out all the cool things that I see around or whatever. I love that idea. It's a great one. So I had another question I was going to ask you, and I think the, running is a sport. I see a lot of clients, we at Physio Room see a lot of clients that love to run, whatever distances. Running is one of the most injurious sports, right? Is that word, injurious? It has a very high rate of injury. And I would imagine you've dealt with some running related injuries yourself. And my question isn't like, what have you dealt with? But more so like, how have you found that you've been able to manage when you are dealing with something, say it's an Achilles injury or my knee hurts, whatever that is. How have you been able to manage like, I still want to train, I want to do this smart, but how have you been able to manage kind of like the mental aspect of that, of like being able to control how you feel about that and not getting like stuck in this like, man, my body is failing me kind of like mentality? Because I know that has happened to me in the past.
Sure.
And I've heard people say, well, like, if my body would just do what I needed to do, whatever, and they're like, it's like a blaming feeling.
Yeah.
How have you sort of navigated some of that?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just coming to reality with like, this is what's happening, right? This hurts. And then from there, the thought process is this hurting sore or is this hurting pain? Like, and to me, those are two different things. Like if you crush a really hard workout and you wake up tomorrow and you're sore, like that's okay to be sore. But if you wake up tomorrow and you're in pain, that's a different conversation. So first of all, it's like, okay, am I in pain or am I sore? Is this something I've been dealing with? Is this a train through? Is this not? And then honestly, it's just acknowledging that. I think a lot of people are like, just try to run through stuff. I'm like, oh no, this isn't a big deal.
Yeah. We'll
just keep running. Well, it's not a big deal today, but 5 weeks from now, after you've run every single day for 5 weeks, it could be. And so I've believed strongly, especially because I got competitive in my 30s. I didn't start as a young runner.
Right.
So I believe firmly in just getting help when you know you need help. And I'm fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to go to a physio room or a massage therapist or anybody. And I know there's a lot of people out there that don't, but just a foam roller, do something and see, did that help? Did that hurt? Did it not? And so for me, it's, again, I get help when I need to, be willing to get help. A lot of runners are just stubborn and they'll run through something for so long because a lot of and then, you'll have to put an asterisk on this probably, but a lot of running injuries you can run through and get better with.
Yeah.
If you're treating them along the way with running through them.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to bring up because I had a runner in here this morning and we talked about, I want you to keep training.
Yes.
I'm not going to tell you to stop training unless there's circumstances to that, right? If I believe you have a stress fracture, well, now we're having a different conversation. If you are running through pain that is like, we'll call it, everyone has a different pain scale. I hate pain scales, but we'll call it 7 out of 10. Well, that's pain. That's not soreness, right? And that's probably causing you to significantly limp and compensate in your gait. Well, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But if you're just having, we'll call it 4 or less out of 10 pain, and something's there, but you can run through it and you can feel that your gait is not being grossly affected by that. Generally speaking, we want you to keep training while we try to address this, whatever this is.
Even if you might dial back the
totally.
volume
or
the intensity, but to me, it's I just don't want to get to the point where I'm running through something and to your point, my gait is changing enough that now all of a sudden that mild foot pain is severe hip pain. Because that's what I don't want. I mean, just literally yesterday, I got a bunch of needles in the bottom of my foot from Dr. Alley. And do you think I wanted to wake up and get needles in the bottom of my foot? I didn't, but I've been kind of dealing with the last week and a half with some plantar pain, and like I've had this Achilles thing lingering for 4 or 5 weeks now. And it's like, okay, I've been doing it on my own. I did a run. I did a couple of runs, and then I did long drives, and I wasn't doing the little treatment things around it. And then the third day, got up to run, and about 30 minutes into the run, I was in so much pain. It was supposed to be a 2-hour run. I totally just stopped. This isn't worth running through. And then I had an appointment with Allie just a couple of days later, so it was worth it. But it's just no, right? You should know. Like, is this uncomfortable? Can I run through it? Is it changing my gait? Make this be realistic with yourself as a runner and as an athlete, because the last thing you want to do is the minor foot issue turn into a major foot issue or a major hip problem.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, the word that keeps coming to mind or keeps coming up in this conversation is just acknowledge it. Whatever it is, it's a thought that comes into your head. It's, it's an injury that you're dealing with. It's something that went wrong in your day. It's that you didn't hit the intention in your training session that you were hoping to, or you did. If you can just acknowledge it, it allows you to then start to move on and move forward with the next steps. But if you keep trying to avoid it, it'll go away, I don't have to worry about that, we'll just go train tomorrow, and you don't acknowledge it and you just try to sweep it under the rug, that's when stuff starts to bubble up, and eventually you're going to be forced to acknowledge it in a different place, and probably in a worse off place, whether we're talking about injury or stress in your life or like whatever that is. The sooner you can acknowledge it and then work to address it, I think the better off you're gonna be.
I totally agree.
This is good. One more thing I want to ask you before we start the process of kind of like wrapping this up is, you mentioned I want to run till I'm 80, and that's why I do things like take care of myself and strength train. And you brought up this topic of strength training. And I would say, over my experience in my career working with runners, that is always one of the biggest points. And we've talked about it on the show before, but we're going to do it again. It's one of like the biggest topics that we talk about. And one of the common pushbacks that I hear, a couple things. I don't have time to strength train. I don't have the stuff, right? I don't have the equipment. I don't have a gym membership to strength train. First of all, there's solutions for those things. But the other thing that I hear a lot is, well, I don't want to get bulky. And then I also still hear, I don't want to lift legs because I don't want my legs to be fatigued for my running. And one of the common things that my response to that is like, okay, I understand all these things that you're saying to me. The purpose of lifting legs here is not to like make you a better runner. It's not to make you faster or anything like that. It's to build resilience and work through full ranges of motion, make you stronger, build resilience into your body and your tissues so that you can tolerate running, which has a high injury rate, so that you can run more. And that's going to make you a better runner. Like lifting is not directly going to make you faster or make you a better runner. It's because it's going to allow you to do these other things that you really want to do. And that's what's going to make you better.
I tell people if you want to run faster, run. if you want to run more and stay healthier, lift and run. And I got into lifting and specifically more heavy lifting when going back to kind of that injury conversation, I started noticing just the prevalence of these just little annoying injuries kept popping up. Just discomfort in the hips, and the glutes weren't feeling great, and the hamstrings weren't feeling great. And it's like, okay. And I wasn't doing any strength training at all in my early 30s. And it's like, okay.
You're running 6-7 days a week.
Yeah, like things are great. I could have a drink, sleep like a baby, wake up, and
10 years ago.
and then yeah, life hits you hard. But I added the strength training because I wanted to be more stable. Like specifically, if you think of like ultra running, 100 miles, your gait is going to break down.
Yeah.
Like, just acknowledge it is going to break down. But I use strength training to delay the breakdown in that gait as long as possible. Because if I can make that take it from maybe mile 60 to mile 85.
Oh, massive difference.
That's a huge difference. If I can maintain a solid gait from those middle miles and those late miles, all of a sudden my competitors look like crap, and they're going to see me running just still with a really clean gait.
Yeah.
And they're gonna be like, dang, like,
and that's gonna get in their head.
Fresh.
Yeah.
And then it gets back to back to the mental side of things. But really I don't know. It's been a huge asset to me, and it's not, I'm not powerlifting 3-4 days a week.
Yeah.
I'll do 1 to 2 days a week of heavier lifting, and heavy. It's not. I'm not maxing out deadlifts every day. This crazy stuff, but I'll do pretty heavy deadlifts to 3 to 6 reps for 3 to 5 sets, and just know that I'm putting a good amount of strain, but I do that the same day as my really hard run. I do the lifting later in the day. So I'll do the run first thing, and then the legs are a little bit tired. Because you want to do your hardest running sessions on fresh legs. You don't want to go into generally a really hard running session with really tired jello-y legs, because then you're entering into, okay, maybe you could actually get an injury from that.
Sure.
So you don't want to do that. But lifting is generally safe, and having a lifting coach or a PT or somebody that can help you with a form. I can tell you right now, my hamstrings are so tight that I need cues to be able to get the butt and the back where they need to be. So actually I'm somebody that I don't deadlift well with lightweight. I need at least I need that feedback from at least 175 pounds or so to be able to feel like, okay, this is where it is. Everything's tight, now I can lift it comfortably.
It's interesting you bring that up. I feel the same thing. Like if I have a moderately heavy weight, it like forces you to move efficient, and it makes you move mechanically well. Like it's easier for me to demonstrate like a good squat with a little bit of weight as opposed to like just the bar, right? Because it's not enough to like force you to engage the right way and stuff, get the right muscles kicking in at the right time in your sequence. So you started to say this. So what is your lifting routine? You don't have to go into all the details, but like, are you lifting like 2 to 3 days a week, or like what does your week look like?
I'll do 1 to 2 days a week of heavier weights. So that's more like a deadlift and plates and things like that.
Right.
And depending on if I went 1 day a week, I will do another 2-ish days a week of body weight specific. So things like just squats and lunges and step ups and multi-plane movements. I'll do a lot of mobo board stuff with like multi-plane, like doing one-legged squats around the compass on a mobo board. And some people are like, oh, that's not strength. It's like, well, that is strength if you're doing enough of them and fatiguing. So for me, that works on multi-level. I'm working on balance, I'm working on ankle stability, I'm working on quad and glute strength at the same time. So it's not every day I go into the gym I'm picking up 225 by whatever on the deadlift. So that's the biggest thing to me is like, what am I doing that's fatiguing the legs that feels good? And so it's a lot of single leg squats, lunges, jumps, box jumps, things like that. Jump downs, big for me for trail running, right? They prepare my quads to not just get totally blown up running down hills. Just basic stuff like that has really helped me. become a better ultra runner.
Yeah, I love some of the things that you mentioned, because you're checking the different boxes, right? You're checking the stability box, you're checking the muscular endurance box, you're checking the single leg box, really important for people that want to run, and important for just everybody. But you're checking the strength box, where you're pushing something or pulling something that's heavier, which is, man, that's often missed, I feel like, for endurance athletes. Like, can we get some different muscle fibers kicking in, get some different neurological adaptations going, aside from just always doing the same thing? Like, we'll see a lot of times an endurance athlete does all endurance-based lifting, where it's just like, I'm doing all body weight, high reps all the time. I'm never doing anything powerful or heavy. And when we make a small transition like that, man, people feel significant benefits. And yeah, that landing and jumping plyometric, especially, I mean, for any runner, but I think for trail runners or anyone that's running anything downhill, oh gosh, that's so important. I've seen numerous people who, like, they sign up for some sort of a net downhill race, whether it's a half marathon or even a 5K, but it's like slightly downhill, and their quads are torched if they didn't prepare themselves for that. So,
and I have said a lot of lower body stuff, but the upper body, like, let's not neglect that.
For sure.
You have good back rotation, use the hyper, reverse hyper, and then even up into the lats. I think a lot of runners forget that lat strength actually is pretty important. Like, what are you pushing and pulling on your upper body? Look at Giannis Kouros is probably the most successful ultra runner in world history. He could rip off like 50 pull-ups in one push. Like, dude had some upper body strength and some upper body endurance. And so I do some pushing and pulling with the upper body too. And then obviously some extension and flexion with the hips and the abs and back too. So it's not just, I'm not just pounding the quads and the hamstrings and the glutes every single day.
Yeah, like, we talk a lot about runners, but everybody, like, we want you to be proportionally strong, right? We want you to have good strength, good mobility, as much as we can feasibly for each individual. Everyone's a little unique in that sense, right? And everyone's not going to move exactly the same way. Everyone doesn't have access to the same stuff. That's why I think you need, like, a coach or a person that's a resource for you. That could be even online or digital or whatever, to, like, help sort of steer you in the right direction on some of this stuff, if you don't already have the education and knowledge to do it. And some people do and some people don't. But I think this discussion was awesome, and I think we could talk about this stuff all day, right? Yeah, we could sit here for hours. And as long as we're hydrated, we'll have to take bathroom breaks and all this stuff. We could talk about all this stuff for so long.
Gonna have to start rolling my feet out.
We have to start moving. We do some moving. I'm sitting here fidgeting.
I am too.
But what I would love for you to do before we just wrap this up is let the people who tune in and listen to us know if they have questions that come up, right? Maybe they want to get into ultra running. They have some questions for you. Maybe they do it, but they've been struggling with the mental side of it. Someone has some questions, they want to reach out to you. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you after they turn this podcast off?
Yeah, slide into my DMs at Run with Don on pretty much anything you can find is the way. And I love those questions. Like, that is, like, I think about looking back on life and what my legacy is. And if my legacy is I helped one person find a joy of running that I've found in my life, that's a good legacy for me. Like, I'd be proud of that. So if there's anybody that has some questions or direction or where to start, or gosh, even like anything, like, you hit me up. Like, I'm happy to help. I had a lot of mentors when I got up and running, and I had a lot of areas that I learned the hard way because I didn't have people helping me and putting me in the right way. And if there's like literally one person that I could maybe cut the line for and get some knowledge to that helps, I'd love to be that resource. So Run with Don. I'm most active on Instagram. It's probably the easiest, but find me runwithdon@gmail too.
Awesome. Thanks, brother.
Appreciate you,
Don. I appreciate you being here, doing this episode, coming down here. I know you're coming to town for more than just one thing, but making a trip down here to do this podcast. You guys, we've been planning this for a while. There's been a few reschedules, and we just figured it would be better in person rather than doing this on Zoom. But who knows? Maybe there'll be another episode. We go into more depth sometime in the future. But for all you guys that tuned in to listen to this episode of The Code, really, again, appreciate your time. And if something that we talked about starts to spark some questions, brings up some ideas for you, makes you wonder more, or you say, hey, I want to know more about HRV, or I want to know more about this or that, please reach out and ask us that so that we can do an episode, we can talk to you individually, and we can help answer those questions for you. In another way that you might do that is if you've not already done so and you've been a listener to this show, whether this is your first or numerous episodes that you listened to, man, it would be so helpful if you went on and dropped a review on whatever podcast platform you're using so that we can keep trying to get this show out to more eyes and ears. And we'll catch you guys on another episode of The Code. Thanks so much.